You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
I'm pleased to be with Tal Hayek today. He launched Acuity Ads years back, and I wanted to start off with the origin story because the ad tech and space is crowded with folks across the Lumascape, and so sometimes understanding the origin story and where you've evolved is really useful for people to know how you're different.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share that, and thanks for having me today. I started in the ad tech space actually in the performance side back in 2004. It was a great success. 2 years later, we sold the company, and it's just that was my kind of school to get into the business, and then I really wanted to go into to graduate to the higher level of marketing, I would say, which programmatic for me was up and coming, and I thought, wow, this is going to change the world of advertising, and that was about 11 years ago. I went to see a good friend of mine. His name is Dr. Nathan McCoos. He has a PhD in AI and algorithm. We started talking about the concept of creating a trading platform for digital ads. Brought in two other founders, Joel Antman, that also comes from the space, and Rachel Kapkan, that actually comes from a special unit in Israeli intelligence, a special tech unit. And the four of us just got together in 2009 and decided to start the business. Small room with about 12 developers, and the first 2 years was all about building the tech. The running joke was that we didn't even have meeting rooms at the time. So if we had to fire somebody, we had to call them down for coffee, and nobody ever wanted to have any drinks with us. So that's how we started, and then we launched Acuity in 2011 in Toronto here, and it started moving so fast, way faster than we even expected. The first year was $1 million in revenue, the second year was 5 million, then 10 and 15, and it just grew like crazy ever since we started it. And we took it public on the Venture Exchange in Toronto in 2014. Went to the big board in Toronto in 2019, and just a couple of months ago, IPO'd on the NASDAQ. So lots of excitement and changes here all the time. But I can tell you, we're a much larger company today, but we still feel and act like a startup. And I think that's a very important piece.
That's a great story. For me, looking at the the sort of documentation of sort of your journey. You sort of look like a DSP with a DMP attached to it, right? But other than that, sort of obviously your sales team is out there, talking to people who are, looking for either typically a DSP, or maybe they're just looking for a new way to get access to inventory. So when they're out there pitching, sort of what's their elevator pitch? What's their differentiation story?
So up to about a year ago, we were competing as a DSP, which is a pretty tight space, and it's hard to compete on. And we were always known to have the best ROI, so the best algorithm out there to deliver ROI. That's a tough message to sell, I can tell you that. We launched a new product called Lumen that's been in the making for 4 years now, and that changed everything for Acuity. Because as we talked about 11 years ago, programmatic solved a big issue in the industry and solved the transactional part, right? We're now doing billions of transactions a day. Everything happens in real time in 50 milliseconds, and it works great. But since then, there was no innovation whatsoever. So for us, we looked at what is the biggest problem that we still see in the industry. And I believe that there's a huge gap between the way marketers plan and think, which is consumer journey, to the way programmatic gets executed, which is a black box execution, nothing to do with the consumer journey. And that's what the Lumen solved. So we launched the Lumen. Again, this is we call it advertising automation, but at the end of the day, it's being able to control the consumer journey. And now as a marketer, Lumen is giving you a blank canvas, which you can plan your journey, and then you click on execute, and it links straight to execution in programmatic today. So that's something that sells itself, because as soon as you do the demo, everybody gets extremely excited. And again, why? Because that's how marketers think. That's how they plan. They just don't have the way to, up to now, they didn't have a way to execute on it.
Now, in consumer journeys for a complex purchase, is your platform and your system sort of recommending that creative actually changes as you're messaging people further down the journey?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what's happening today, because of the black boxes, we bombard consumers with the same message over and over and over again. And people that know a little bit more about the industry know why. And it's because the black box is trying to capture the last action or the last view. They're pretty much trying to get the credit for the sale. And that annoys the hell out of the consumers. And with consumer journey, first of all, we break it down into 3 phases. There's the awareness phase, there's the engagement phase, and the conversion phase. And absolutely, every one of those phases will have different messages. And even within the phase itself, it will have the right sequence of the message. You don't tell the story in one creative anymore. You're telling it in a series of creatives, and as you move consumer through the journey.
So I would imagine that the ability to sort of have the historical context of your touch points with the consumer is pretty important to be able to pull that off. Has that created a headwind for you with IDFA and with potentially with the third-party cookie issues, which of course are already live with Safari and Firefox, but have been kicked down the road with Chrome? Or are you still able to sort of choreograph the messaging, even without sort of the IDFA or third-party cookie ecosystem?
So IDFA for us specifically, it's easy. For other companies, not so much. We don't do much in apps advertising, So for us specifically, it hasn't been an issue, but I understand it's an industry issue. The cookies we do rely on cookies for some of our traffic, of course, and it's look, for me, the internet doesn't work without third-party cookies. Clearly, it's been, Google wanted to remove it and figured out that they can't do it at this point. But the third-party cookies were never actually designed to do what they're doing today. It was kind of something we fell into. And I do think there's better solutions out there. And for me, the universal ID is whichever one it's going to be. There's many ones that are trying to do it right now. Our job is just to connect with all of them and to figure it out. But look, we are working with our vendors, our our customers, our competitors. The industry is working as a whole in order to solve this. And it's a better solution than third-party cookies. And I do believe that this is what's going to replace it. And I think even, when you want to think about the future a little bit, think about the past. Who's paying for content online today? It's not the consumers, it's the advertisers who are paying for content. And I don't believe, and I think many people don't believe, that the consumers are going to start paying for what they're getting for free today. Therefore, it's going to be supported by ads, and therefore we need to show people relevant ads. So one way or another, it's going to like our industry is going to excel with those parameters.
Right. Well, it's great that you sort of hedged your bets by integrating into all the significant players in the identity space because it's too early and nobody's ready to call the winner of that horse race yet. So it's probably best that you spread your tentacles into those various channels. The other factor, with regards to, third-party cookies were also real, and identity solutions of different types were also one of the tools in the toolbox to make sure that traffic was authentic and genuine, right? And so whether it's fraudulent traffic or whether it just happens to be invalid in some other way, which can happen accidentally, right? Obviously, marketers are really concerned about the impressions that they're paying for being authentic impressions. So
they should be, because there's lots of fraud in the industry. We've been fighting fraud since this day we started. When we started, we were optimizing for fraud because we didn't really know what was going on, and the fraud traffic acts really good for what we're trying to achieve. It took some experience and time and algorithm changes, and partnerships with third parties in order to be able to, and I'm not going to say eliminate it, but almost eliminate it. The vast majority of it is being caught and killed before we even touch it. So
right. Are some of your clients though asking for sort of whitelists and using PMPs and deal IDs more heavily as a result, because they want to sort of go a flight to quality publishers that they feel maybe have a less likelihood of fraud?
It started happening that way, I think, a few years ago. But once the third party, like fraud verification companies, started taking off, and most of the players now use those things, I think they're more relaxed and which is better because it allows the algorithm to really do its job.
Great. So I'm thinking back to your messaging, at the different stages of the customer journey issue. So obviously, if you're going to start trying to tune your messaging based on the where they are in their stages of the purchase cycle or purchase funnel, if you want to call it that, there are costs associated typically with creative execution, right? So how do you sort of balance out that? Like what size should a campaign be where it makes sense to really sort of start to hyper tune your creative to the different audiences, even perhaps more than just 3 buckets, but perhaps even more buckets with that? And are you using DCO to do that, or are you actually asking, designers to recreate ads based on these segments or stages?
Not my expertise. We don't do any creative, but our customers do. But what we hear from them is once you do, so first of all, they used to always do that. They're just using TV ads in the past, and now because it's programmatic, they can put it on everything under Lumen. So it's actually, I would imagine that it's actually cheaper to produce a digital video asset than proper TV asset, and you can produce many different versions of it and tweak it, and you're able to target it on a personal level. So not my expertise, but what we are hearing from our clients is they're seeing major increase in the ROI when they're doing it that way. So it's well worth the investment.
Great. Well, I guess it's actually then driving a renaissance in creativity as well, and creative and messaging, because you've now given the power to the agencies of targeting differently, to the different stages of the purchase funnel. So that's, I guess, good for them because you're empowering them to move away from a one-size-fits-all creative to actually creative that resonates with the consumer based on where the consumer is at. Sometimes agencies are siloed, though. A media buying agency may be different than a creative agency. So are there any best practices that you're hearing with regards to coordination, right? Because if it's just a media buying agency and they're not in charge of creative either, and you don't handle the creative and they don't handle the creative, and then the creative is yet another entity, right? Are there best practices with regards to sort of sharing the best way to execute?
It's so new that we launched it in Q4, and one of the big issues in the beginning was like we were getting the deals, like people were signing deals with commitments and everything, and then they want to execute, and they're sending out the same creative as they did before, and we're like, no, it doesn't work that way. You're gonna have to put some thinking and design the consumer journey and create it. So but it wasn't a surprise that they all did that. It took them a little longer, but they came back. And then once they see the results and they see the kind of not only the ROI increase, they see the insights that from watching the consumer journey and where they excel, where the bottlenecks are, and so forth. Then they start investing more and more and more. And look, it's different approach to programmatic because programmatic up to now was just the bottom of the funnel, mostly bottom of the funnel, right? Just a conversion piece, and they were doing the rest in other places, but now they can coordinate it all together. So it's generally speaking a bigger investment than what they're used to on a DSP.
Right. So it sounds like there will need to be sort of a new process often than what agencies are used to, right? And so they'll need to really, think more about the customer journey, think more about the creative, and that put the proper level of investment into the early stage creative in particular. If they were just used to harvesting demand and they weren't used to pushing people down the funnel, they'll need to think that through.
And the other thing that we're seeing is that, people were talking about marketers bringing in digital in-house for many, many years. We're actually seeing it happen now. And specifically, Lumen gives you the ability to do it without great expertise. It's a drag and drop system, very simple to use. You don't need to be a highly trained expert to use it. So we're definitely seeing more and more of marketers that are taking control but bringing it in-house.
Right. What does the illumin system sort of make the recommendations as to frequency capping for the various stages, or do you sort of empower the marketer to decide, I want to hit the upper funnel person this much, and then mid funnel, and then obviously on the last stage, you continue to message them till they convert potentially, but still their frequency capping is one of the methods to sort of assure that you're not overspending, chasing down a consumer. So how does the illumin system handle that?
So first of all, illumin does have frequency capping in it, but I hate using it because I don't think it's the right way of doing a consumer journey. The way we do it, the way we recommend doing it is, okay, so let's say we're setting up this audience. The first step is going to be, let's say, creative number 55. And now you have the ability to decide how many times you're going to show that creative. So you say, okay, I want to show that creative 5 times. And after I've showed that creative 5 times, I'm never, ever going to show this one consumer the creative again. I'm going to show part 2 of that message. Okay, we're now getting them more engaged, right? And then part 2 of the message, you're going to show them 3 times. And then part 5 of the message, whichever way those are decisions that are done manually because it's a part of a story. This is not something that can be randomly selected. It's like part A of a story, part B of a story, part C, and then now it's engagement. We got to engage people in the story more. The decision about how many times to show at this point is a decision that's being done by the marketers. We do have best practices, but future iterations, the algorithm is going to make the suggestions and make it more flexible.
Interesting. When I think about my own, I don't use an ad blocker, being in the industry, obviously, but for those people who are being exposed to the ads, now that they've got viewability checks, right? So we at least know that it was on screen, and potentially viewable. But there's also, a little bit of banner blindness going on. So do you feel like different size ad units should to some extent mitigate the impression caps? In other words, if it's a more in your face placement and a larger ad unit, that I could be more sure that they saw. But if it was a smaller ad unit, or it was a skyscraper or whatever on the side of the page, do I sort of maybe want to run some more impressions against that individual because it's, they might not have noticed it?
Look, this is an opinion, of my personal opinion, but our system is only made decision by the algorithm and based on what works for your campaign. So based on the signal we're getting and the conversions and whatever it is that the advertiser is trying to achieve. But my opinion, and you have to be very diversified. I mean, video is a great way of sending your message, and it keeps people engaged, and you are more likely to know that they actually saw it in a pre-roll or post-roll and all that. So connected TV is also an integral part of it. So I think that if you're running a campaign and you have connected TV and you have videos and you have audio messages and you have different type, and you also have some display, because remember, a lot of the buying decisions that we make, we don't even not necessarily we remember seeing this banner somewhere, but it's been registered to you in a subconscious kind of way. I don't know, the research are saying you have to see it 7 times in order to notice it. But if it's together with a proper campaign and it's put in the right places, I think it's effective. Obviously, you do not pay the same for banner ads than you pay for video ads.
Right.
It's just a matter of the mix in the consumer journey.
Right. So is there anything sort of either industry-wide or within your own platform that's sort of coming up that you're super excited about?
the biggest thing that came out is Illumin itself, right? So we launched it in Q4 of last year. And to be honest with you, it was brand new. We didn't really were 100% understanding of how it's going to work and all that, but we learned so much since then. We also thought that the adoption will take longer. We thought, it's going to be a long sales cycle. We're going to see people using it in the middle of 2021. On the first quarter we launched it, we already did 1.5 million in revenue. In the second quarter, we had 3.2 million. In the third quarter, 5.2. So it's moving extremely fast, and we have major customers testing it, and some of them are using it already. So for us, Illumin is the biggest breakthrough. We always say that Illumin is changing the world, obviously the world of advertising. And that's what we're excited about. But everything that we invest in now is into Illumin. So more features into Illumin, more types of creative. So today, Lumen only does programmatic, but as a part of the consumer journey, we have to include other things, even though, maybe other things are walled gardens. That's not how consumers operate. They don't think, today I'm in Facebook, so, it's a walled garden. No, it doesn't work that way. And we do have access to connect to the walled gardens. Obviously, it's a one-way access and it's limited. But it should be part of the consumer journey. So we will work on adding things like that, and email marketing and search and out of home and influencer. All those things should be a part of the consumer journey, and it's part of the roadmap of Lumen.
Well, that's great. Thanks for sharing the roadmap, because I think there are clearly a lot of agencies and marketers who really would prefer to reduce the number of platforms that they have to touch, right? Yeah, and to the extent that there can be, one brain and one reporting interface that can report on the entire consumer journey. That's like the holy grail, right, of digital marketing at this point. And more and more marketing is in fact digital. So it sounds like that's your long-term vision, is to really create that operating system, right, for the digital marketing.
Exactly. You got it. You're helping me with the message a little bit. I like it.
No charge. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me for the podcast, Tal. And I look forward to watching the product roadmap evolve, and, hearing the updates from you and your team as you, roll out the features that that your marketing customers and agency customers are asking for.
Thank you very much.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in the Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.